Julia Landauer, and I'm a champion race car driver and keynote speaker. I got started in go karting when I was 10 years old because it was an activity that my parents wanted me and my siblings to be able to do so that we could stay together as a family on the weekends. But then they also really liked that it was co ed, and racing is one of the few sports where women compete against the men all the way through the top levels. So I loved it right away. I was good at it, and we just figured out how to keep climbing the ranks. And then in terms of a favorite driver I had growing up, I grew up watching Formula One. And so some of my favorites were Michael Schumacher, obviously, historically Ayrton Senna, big fan of Paul Newman in terms of more amateur drivers. And then, yeah, so that was my youth in racing. Now I'm racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, which is the second series from the top in NASCAR. And it's been an up and down journey to get here. I got my start in Formula Cars and won a championship in the Skip Barber Racing Series. I raced Formula BMW. I raced part time throughout high school and college in cars like Ford Focus Midgets and late models and Legends cars all over the country in Canada. And I really just tried to do as well with the seat time that I was getting. And I wasn't getting full season, so there were always competitors that had more time on track, but I was able to prove myself. I was able to win races. And then when I graduated from college, I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is basically the heart of NASCAR. And I raced in a weekly NASCAR series where I won that track championship. And then I raced in what's now called the ARCA West Series, which is the first televised series in NASCAR. And then I raced a little bit in the Canadian NASCAR series part time. I raced in the European NASCAR series in 2020 and became the highest finishing American in that series ever with a fifth place in the championship. And then this year in 2022, made my debut in the Xfinity series. So it's been challenging. It's been so exciting to race so many different types of cars, and I'm really excited for what's still to come. Racing in NASCAR is super competitive. It's very unique in terms of driving style. I got my start on road courses, turning left and right. And I was just talking about it with someone earlier that, the whole style of driving on an oval is very different. The way you enter corners, the way you trail brake, how you deal with banking, and then racecraft, how you pass, how you set up for a pass. You don't have really threshold braking zones, so there aren't those optimal passing areas. So it really was an uphill battle to learn a totally new type of driving and new type of craft, basically. But it's really fun. I like to say that, when it comes to technically driving a car on a racetrack, I find road courses more exciting because you have a lot of different types of corners. You might have elevation change. But when it comes to racing, like on ovals, you can be side by side with someone for laps and laps and laps. And there's always stuff going on. And so the actual like racing and racecraft is just has a lot more going on. So I have a lot of fun with it. It's very challenging. The races are long. You get really hot in the car. It can be 155 degrees Fahrenheit in the car for the driver. But it's so satisfying. Web3 and NFTs are at a really interesting growth spot right now. And I think the integration of Web3 into sports is only just beginning. So, I look at it, and I've been in the Web3 space for pretty much almost 2 years now. And I find that there's obviously the kind of the fan engagement, the membership component, the exclusive access that comes with holding, the utility that you can provide those fans that are purchasing. But then I also think there's the potential to have a lot in more of a metaverse capacity, and the ability to have like really active engagement with fans on a level that maybe right now we can only get to by having a pit pass or being a VIP at a track. Like I think there's an access element that is really interesting. And I'm also curious to see how the financial aspect evolves a little bit, because racing is a very financially driven sport. It is dependent on sponsors. It's dependent on, being able to pay for good equipment and pay for good people. And it's just such a high financial barrier to entry. So I'm really interested to see if the ownership element of NFTs, of the transparency of crypto, if that has a way to kind of permeate the financial ecosystem of the sport. I think with Web3 as a whole, you have the ability to kind of mix the idea of crowdfunding with the idea of, really supporting those who resonate most with people and with fans. And, I don't know that it would necessarily democratize it more, but it has this ability to kind of serve more people if done properly. Racing culture will definitely embrace Web3 technology. Different types of racing might get on board a little sooner, but we are, as a sport, motorsports is obviously technology centric, technology driven. And you already see quite a bit of Web3 and crypto presence in series like Formula One, in different sports car series. And, I was able to introduce NFT communities to NASCAR, and we've seen a few since then. So it's definitely starting. I think Web3 is still ironing out some, I would say, onboarding logistics, kind of making it a little more accessible. I think it needs to be a little more easily adaptable before it'll really, really catch on. But I think we're just at the beginning. And I think that the more minds that are thinking in terms of Web3, the more creativity and the more innovation we're going to have. So, for people who haven't really watched a lot of NASCAR or motorsports races, preparation starts, days, if not weeks before the race. We're constantly working on our physical and mental strength. And so I work with a motorsport specific trainer. It's called PitFit. They work with IndyCar drivers as well. And we do everything from core and cardio strength to neck training, so that when we crash, because all racers do crash. When we crash, like, our necks are as stabilizing as possible. We do neurological training. So everything from reaction time on apps to peripheral vision training to, being able to take in multiple inputs and still be precise with our actions, all these things that you have to do in the car, right? In the car, you have to be strapped in super tightly, so you have the physical component of needing to use your upper body to steer and to hold up your core and your neck. And then you have to hit those perfect marks, right? The perfect entry point, the perfect time to lift off the gas, the perfect time to hit the brake, turn in, not wiggle too much, that perfect level of grip. And you have to hit all those perfect marks lap after lap after lap for 200 laps. For us in the Xfinity series, it's 2.5 hours and you're doing this while your tires are degrading and while, you're burning off fuel. So the weight distribution in the car is changing throughout the race, and maybe the sun's setting. And so your visuals are changing, and you've got cars around you that you're trying not to hit. And you've got your spotter talking to you, and you feel the vibrations, and you're getting tired and sweaty. And again, it's just, there's so much going on. It's absolutely exhausting. Um, but it's really fun. Simulator is a big part of training for racing. And I will admit that, like, I wasn't allowed to have video games growing up, so I did not grow up on playing racing games or anything. But something like iRacing has been super helpful, because they map out the track, and so you have the bumps that are in the actual racetrack show up on the simulator. And so just being able to practice that perfect execution of lap after lap after lap, on a road course, it's really beneficial to get the visual points in all the different corners, especially if it's a new track. And it helps you get into the mindset of staying focused for that long. So I find them helpful. I wouldn't say I'm a naturally great simulator racer. And there are racing leagues on simulators, but it's a really helpful tool. But it's still a little different because you don't quite have that seat of the pants feeling, right? You're making your decisions purely based off of visual
Yeah.
cues instead of the physical ones. Memorable moment as a driver is such a tough question because there are some of the big highlights, like, winning my first race in a race car when I was 14 years old. That was huge, right? I was a 14-year-old girl finally going through puberty, and like I beat all the men who were racing. Like that was so cool. Another kind of in that along that same vein, when I graduated college and moved to the South to go racing, my first season out of college, I won the championship. And to me, that was a really big confidence boost that when I focus 100% on it, I'm the best. I can be the best. So that was great. But then there are also really important learning moments in racing. Like in one of my early go-kart races, so I was 10 or 11. I hadn't yet won a race. And so I was probably 10. I hadn't yet won a race. And I was leading and I was so excited. And I started kind of envisioning what it would be like to cross the finish line first and how I was going to celebrate because I only had 3 laps left. And then I spun myself off the racetrack because I lost focus. And so it was so embarrassing and like such an ego kill. And my parents were disappointed, but it was a big learning experience. And you just go through that and you realize, oh my goodness, I have to stay focused. I have to stay in the zone. And so there are a lot of those life lessons that you learn that might be painful in the moment, but the sooner you learn them, the kind of better you are in life in general. So I'm really grateful for those moments as well. I would love to be able to continue to, carve a path for more women in the sport in general, whether that's driving, mechanics, engineers, team principals. There's just so little representation right now, and so few examples of women really being at their best. And you're seeing more of it. Times are definitely changing, but I hope to kind of play some part in normalizing having women just be, competitive people, or to be the best engineers, or to be the best mechanics, or to be the best racers. And that would mean a lot. Think it's very important to share what my experiences have been so that other younger women or other minorities in some capacity, if they're going through something similar, they can know that, even those who have made it kind of far or who have a lot of experience have dealt with obstacles and challenges, and it has been miserable at times, and we've had to really advocate for ourselves. And I just think sharing those, like, not necessarily glorious experiences, but like the really crucial things that we've done to an experience that will help normalize like the full spectrum of trying to get somewhere, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that no one is alone if they're having a rough time or if they're experiencing obstacles. My hopes for my career, it's always to be as competitive as possible, try to bring out the best in my team, to be able to really operate at the max capacity that we can. I want to, try to be able to win again in this, or sorry, I want to be able to win in this series. If I can climb the ranks up to the Cup Series, that would be amazing. But really right now, because it's such a challenging industry to get into and a challenging industry to climb in, I'm really enjoying the short term, the upcoming race that I have, and looking to next year and really just trying to stay present, get as much seat time as I can, and help inspire as many people as possible.